Hey guys, welcome to another episode of INTJ INFJ Coffee. Today we're doing a freestyle conversation about the two different judgment axes. We're supposed to do it for like the water series, but like I think my NE just needs externalization before I can really just get down and write a script. So yeah, this is gonna be one of the few times where Alex didn't take any notes, so I'm excited.
I have like 2 lines of notes.
Should have taken no notes, Alex. So I guess the two different judgment axes is kind of hard to distinguish between feeling and thinking because we all have feelings and then we all have thoughts, and then they seem oppositional too. Like for sensing and intuition, they seem related. Like you can't infer anything if you've never experienced anything. Right. So they seem like related, but then thinking and feeling seem oppositional. The general thing that I've kind of summed it up as in my mind is that introverted judging has to do with internal modeling, and extroverted judging has to do with like external reality or results. For thinking and feeling, I thought of it as feeling being desires, whether introverted or extroverted, and then thinking being the truth. So it's not thinking feeling, it's the truth versus wants. So it's kind of confusing because desire is part of truth. Like it's true that people have desire.
Right.
And that's how you see TI people taking into account FE in terms of the society's desires to form their like internal truth model. And potentially what's true will affect what you desire.
The way I conceptualize it is like values versus logic, or like rationale, some sort of like rationality. But I think it kind of condenses down to the same thing. Like we value probably our desires, or like the social kind of environment of general desires or things like that. And using logic, it's like maybe also like a desire to get to the truth kind of.
Yeah, try to get two different words, because this whole like logic versus value thing, I guess I feel like it's been overused, and then people use like anyone can use logic, so people get really confused. I kind of like this whole like desire versus truth thing, because if you look at people talking, a lot of times you will see FI users saying I like something, or I don't like something, or I want something, or I don't want something. And then a lot of times you see TI users saying this thing is true, this thing is not true, this thing's good, not good, which implies like a FE value judgment and leading to a TI truth. Okay, I want to share like this comment that we got. We were talking about inferior functions, and I think for the INTPs, inferior FE, I started talking about how in some forums this like person who I think is INTP was asking people like, am I justified to feel this, or is this socially justifiable?
Right.
And I was saying that they're like looking to see if it's FE like correct to do this in society. I love this. Like this person on YouTube commented, no, you're wrong. Like we're not looking to see if it's right or not in a FE sense. We're looking for if it's logical in a TI sense. I was just like, don't you see the irony of like, what does asking people have anything to do with logic?
Right,
but,
especially subjective logic.
Yeah, like you're asking people, and he's like, oh, I'm not asking to see if it's right or not in a social sense. I'm asking them to see if it's logical in a TI sense, but I don't see how that would be related. But then I think that's the whole point. Like FE is always going to be related to TI. Yeah, like I said, the truth is people have different desires. Like how do we justify that?
Encapsulate that in that TI truth. That everyone has
in that
desires.
TI model. So
right.
It's almost like the people on that axis is just calling the same thing two different things. The FE people are like, oh, I want to know if it's socially good or justified, and then the TI people, I want to see if it's logical, but they're all on the same axis. They're both looking at the same things.
Right.
Okay.
So they're all looking at kind of like external desires, right? And making sure that like everyone's external desires can be accounted for in some sort of like logical model or some sort of form of truth.
Yeah, and I feel like the FE heavier people would probably have weaker internal modeling and be more just reliant on the external social feedback, and vice versa for the ITPs. I guess they would have higher internal modeling and like less even awareness of social feedback, but they still care about it. You know, it's just strengths and weaknesses, but they're still on that same mental like wavelength path. This conversation that me and my parents have, both of my parents are on the FE axis. So my dad is like INTP and my mom's ESFJ. And the conversations we have are super interesting. Like I always say, oh, I don't like how we have to like sometimes lie for marketing or something like that. So I'm just saying like, I don't like this. That's very FI. I don't like this. Or sometimes I say it's not efficient. Yeah, I was like, oh, it doesn't even make sense to do this. And then my dad was like, actually it does, because this person has this kind of talent, so they should do this, and that person has that kind of talent, so everything works together. Like he was saying like, oh, maybe your boss like has no talent, but managing people is talent. I don't know, like it's hard to say what it is, but basically I'm saying I don't like it, and he's saying, but this is the way. Like it's every conversation that I have with them is me saying I don't like something, and I think things should be like this or like that. And my mom is usually saying, oh, but you have to be nice to them anyway, which is a very FE like resultant thing to do. And my dad is always saying, yeah, but it makes sense, or this is the way the world is, which is a very TI thing to say.
Maybe on the TI-FE axis, the unit is always kind of like the collective in a sense. Because even TI, I think when it boils things down to like these internal logical models, it's still kind of looking at something that works like all of the time or for everyone, or if it works in different situations, how would it encompass these different situations? So it's kind of like this unit of like the whole. Everything is connected. And I think in the TEFI, it's like the unit is the individual. Because even with, I think, TE results, I think it's a very kind of case-by-case basis that TE is used. It's like, okay, this thing might be logical in this context, and then in this context it might not, so we might have to experiment more and figure out how it is. So it's kind of like, how do I say case-by-case? It's kind of very like...
Singular?
Yeah, kind of singular versus all-encompassing. Maybe that's a good way to differentiate the two axes.
For example, if I drop a glass in this case, you expect it to go down in like, I don't know, like 0.2 seconds. I don't know. Because of math says so or something, that's like the internal model says so. But today when I dropped it, it took 0.3 seconds. Well, this is very simplistic. Every kind of function can get more complex and verge away from these stereotypes. So at the base level, it's probably like the TE user accepts that as like a new instance of truth and records it or whatever, but the TI user is like, okay, why? Like they have to figure out why.
It's like, was there wind, or was there different distance, or to
change their internal model. And I feel like for the parallel, if for people's wants, it's like for FE, it's like, okay, they have to see that it's apparent what everyone wants. But for FI, I don't really, I think it's just what I know people want different things, and it's fine, but...
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, though. I think FI is more like, okay, everyone is their kind of own universe unto themselves. Like, everyone has a singularity.
Right.
Yeah, we might disagree, but at the same time, where it's like, okay, that person is their own person, and it's like, whatever, you can do your own thing.
Right.
And I think FE kind of might have more of a desire to, like, even if you respect differences, it's like, okay, but how do we come to that commonality? How do we kind of...
Yeah, it's kind of like the thing, like for FI, I don't even know where FI desires come from. It's just, they just happen. But I think FE desires, it takes the external desires into account somehow, almost like automatically. I know like a lot of FE users' motivations come from TI, like what they perceive as true and consistently true.
That's true.
Oh yeah, consistency is definitely one thing. Like FI tends to be quite consistent, even if it changes over time, but it's consistent to itself.
Yeah.
Like when there's a change, it's consistent to the rules of its own universe.
Change.
Yeah, like same thing with TI, but I would say TE adapts with whatever is here.
Yeah.
But then
same with FE as well.
Both the extrovert judging functions, they're motivated by the internal judgment function. Like the FE people are gonna just be nice if that kind of makes sense for their TI, and like TE, finding out what's true in the external world, that has to be motivated by FI, because it has to be like, I want this one thing, how do I achieve that in this very specific scenario?
Because I think in TI is like, yes, there is a way to figure out the entirety of the universe in some sort of like model, right? But I think from the TE side, it's like, no, there's just too many random variables and stuff that you can't really figure out. So like that FI consistency helps you kind of go in the direction where it's like, okay, well, I can kind of generally figure things out in this one specific niche, maybe.
And then now we're getting kind of like into weird territory, but I do find this pattern of like a lot of high TI users, either they are quite blessed in not having any desires, or they frame it completely differently.
Right.
Like I'm sure like everyone has motivations, right? But they don't frame it in like that they want it. It's just something that makes sense to do for them.
Right, yeah.
Like that might be something I conclude later on to justify myself, but that's definitely not the first thought. It seems like TI users, like high TI users, they have that as their first thought, like, oh, it makes sense for me to do this.
Yeah. And I think even like maybe as a young TE user, I thought maybe not in the same terms of like what makes sense, but maybe like what is the most feasible in terms of like external results. It's like, okay, I can do this thing because that seems feasible, but then eventually I'm like, okay, wait, but if it's not congruent with what I want, then I can't do it.
Yeah, feasible and makes sense are so different.
Yeah.
Because the feasible is how, but makes sense is why.
Is that what I think it all came back to, like?
Your
yeah, that's exactly what my points.
Yeah, maybe that's also related to the FE.
I think
FI.
it is, yeah.
Because the FE people, like maybe they're wanting to achieve a result, say like being happy. They're very effective in doing it, but like I think the FI person has to figure out like why they're doing it in the first place. Oh, that's kind of confusing because obviously the FE user has the TI reason of why they're doing it.
Right. Like I think the FE user is like, okay, there is this desire maybe to like have this sort of like, you know, thing that I want to impart upon, you know, my community or whoever I'm with or something like that. They'll know how to do it because FE just notices what is effective, what isn't effective, and they can, and it's kind of adaptable like the way TE is, right? And it's like, okay, in this context, this might be more better with this person, so this is how I will cheer this person up or something. But if FI is like, oh yes, generally I value being nice to the people around me, but then they might not actually know how to like achieve that. Or achieve that through TE means, but that might be like counterproductive.
It's really interesting that it's so hard to articulate how they're different, and yet when you meet these people, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
Like if you meet a TE dom and an FE dom to meet, okay, honestly, if you're judging them by their behavior and what they say, you might not be able to tell the difference. But if you just kind of know the vibe, well, we do it through micro expressions, but if you just know the vibe is so different, like,
yeah.
Okay, I have an example. I don't think I can list this person specifically, but this person was on YouTube making like this video that's kind of offensive, and they think they're INFJ, or like we think he's INTJ. In the comments, someone was like, oh, are you sure you're INFJ? This video is like lacking in FE or whatever. And then he wrote this huge comment that says all the different times where he was able to like analyze people's emotional expression, and therefore he definitely is INFJ. But so yeah, which leads me to an interesting point of like what people say versus what they do. Like he's saying he's emotionally sensitive. He said like 5 paragraphs of how emotionally sensitive he is, but then the video that he posted his comment on is like so offensive and lacking in like FE subtlety.
Right.
It's just like what people think they are and what they say versus how they come off.
Yeah.
There's this person who I thought was like INTJ for a long time, who I've recently come to conclude that he's actually SFP. This was like before we did micro expressions. This was like a person from like a long time ago. But yeah, I thought he was INTJ. You know, everything he said was exactly how a stereotypical like INTJ would say. Like all this like, oh, I want to be powerful and like work hard. And if you look at what he does, like his pastimes are really like SFP, like traveling and having fun, which anyone can do. But he also got emotional like quite a lot. So like the emotional reactivity was like super high, which is suggestive of FI values being crossed, or just
and just generally how I think quick he was to like have an idea or to like change an idea, a topic, or just generally his kind of pace of life was very like quick and moving to this thing to another thing, and it seems more like extroverted perception rather than introverted perception.
Okay, like for example, sometimes you're sad about something. Oh, this is such an FI example. Sometimes you're sad about something. This is my problem, my everyday problem. And INFP is feeling sad because she didn't like accomplish something. I don't know. And the FE user hugs the INFP or like says something cheerful, like, oh, you are so beautiful, everything's fine. And I can't do it. It's so funny. That was me mimicking an FJ. It sounds so sarcastic, but no, they'll say it in a way to infuse all these like positive feelings in you. And then the TE user is like, why are you sad? And then I'm like, well, this thing failed. And then they tell you how this thing is not gonna fail, like change ABC. So yeah, I feel like the TE user in the sense is changing the truth, which is my shit situation in external reality, whereas the FE user is almost like changing my wants in reality. Like, you want to be happy, so here's a bunch of positive feelings. Yeah, I guess it's hard for us to say. This is why we make so many videos about a perception axis and not judgment axis, because we don't have the other judgment axis. Because yeah, to me it's quite confusing. It's like, how is that supposed to help me? Well, see, here is when the FE person thinks I'm stubborn for not changing my emotions when they're trying to change my emotions. But how am I supposed to be happy when the cause of my unhappiness, which is the shit TE thing that happened to me, is not solved yet, you know?
Right.
But I think for TI users, it's totally different.
When we were talking about how that person who you thought was NTJ was actually SFP, and how you were relating to like that emotional reactivity to like FI, and that kind of took me a while to get. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
That'd be good. I guess it's like FI intention, right? It's like, okay, I value this thing that I'm trying to do, right? So then if it doesn't happen, then it's not so much about the actual physical thing, like the end result, like in a TE way, right? It's more about expectation or actually, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of confusing it. I think I got it.
No, I think I got it. Yeah, FI is more about intention than TE, which is more about results.
Yeah, I guess TE users in comparison, at least seemingly, kind of maybe, externally, visibly have like more emotional stability, because if something happens that they don't expect in a TE way, then it's like, okay, well, how can I then make it work in a TE way, right? It's like we're figuring that out, but then the FI is more like, oh, well, my value is crossed, and now...
It just reminds me of like the whole gratitude thing. I think I like to thank people when they have good intentions, no matter what the result is, and I think I expect that from me. Like, if I have good intentions, I think people should react positively to me. But it's not like, for you, we were talking about this, you were like, oh, you think you should be thanked when you actually produce a good result. Actually, we were talking about my boyfriend, but then you said you related to that. Like, he was confused why I thanked him before he actually produced a result, but I was just thanking him for having the intention to do it in the first place. Right. And then you're like, oh yeah, I relate to his thought process of being thanked like after you actually accomplish the thing to help the other person, not just like intending to do it.
Okay, sorry, wait, I need to... Can I have an NI moment here?
Yeah.
I think I'm... So originally we were talking about... Oh yeah, so...
Sorry. Oh my god, I jumped too quickly to different topics.
No. I don't want to like necessarily make the stereotype that like FPs are more emotional than TJs or something like that, but probably like just you might be more externally... Like you might verbalize it more, or just show it some way more externally than TJs might.
Why is that though, I wonder?
Well, I think first of all, FPs have an extroverted perception function. So in that sense, you're probably taking things more like as they come versus like conceptualizing time and like a kind of as you expect it to be moving forward. But yeah, if you go back to like desires, like FI desire, then I guess that makes sense. That if you don't get that desire fulfilled, then that may make you upset.
Maybe it does make sense. Maybe the internal judging is just more like, okay, if you have internal judging first, then you're bringing to the external world all sorts of like internal things. Like you're not a blank slate. Like, you have all these things that have to match up to the external environment, but then if you're like extroverted judging, that function is just kind of blink because you're supposed to just adapt to. There's nothing inside, it's just outside. It's like you must figure out the truth of what everyone desires and then make your decisions versus figuring out what you desire and then figuring out how that is supposed to work out in the how to make it a reality. That's the thing that you said about INFPs, right? A bunch of INFPs always say, how do I make my dreams a reality? Right. It's like how to make your desires true via TE. Like, I want this, but how do I make it an actual real thing, therefore making it true? So
I guess we're both kind of on that singular modality axis, where we're kind of just going after what we want or case by case scenario, but then the TE, higher TE is like Right, nothing is ever kind of constant. You always kind of have to adapt and change. So it's almost like expecting things not to work out. But the FI is like, yes, I have this internal consistency and I want the external to meet that.
About the whole like bringing stuff inside thing. Okay, so this is like a Dave Superpowers thing. But I think he was talking about how higher T users, like or low, when you have low FI, you're less in touch with what you want. And I guess when you have lower T, you're less in touch with what actually is true in the world as it happens. So I think that if you're just concentrating on what works in the world, like as it happens, and less in touch with what you want, then when something that happens that you don't want, you don't realize it. Like I would be really sensitive to my preferences and desires. So everything could be like, oh, that's good, that's bad. I don't want this, I don't want that. But maybe a T user is like, okay, this thing doesn't work. Like I'm gonna make this thing work. So it's not as personal as not liking it or not wanting it. So maybe that's why they don't show that they're upset as much, or they might not know that they're upset.
Yeah, that's the thing. Or it might just take longer for us to realize that we're upset.
Yeah.
When like the TE things keep happening, and then we're like,
so you're less in touch with your FI, which is
So then would that be the reverse for TIFE? Would it be more on like the FE side, where people are more in touch with why they're upset? Like
I think it would be they're more aware of other people's desires, like the society's desires and everyone else's around them's desires. I don't think emotions has anything to do with this whole thinking and feeling though.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird because FI and FE, it doesn't matter what you are, you're going to have emotions because of your hormones and stuff and all sorts of reasons. So that's a bit confusing. That's why I said FE is aware of people's desires. I didn't say they're aware of other people's feelings, although I think to an extent biologically we're all kind of aware of other people's feelings. It's called empathy. If you're a psychopath, you don't have that developed. But so it's like it's not about figuring out people's feelings, although I think that might be kind of confusing because I think different people have a different scale of how much they can understand people's feelings.
Well, I think that's why I was confused initially. I guess I'm going back to that one instance, but that's why I was confused initially when you were like, oh, he's probably like an FP because he would say like, I'm so sad. And then I was like, oh, is that like a thing that like FPs would say more than like TJs? But maybe it is.
I think high FI people are just more aware when they don't like something or something that they don't want is happening. Like for a TE, maybe it's more like, oh, something's happening. There's no something that's happening that I don't want. Like maybe they're just less attached to whether or not they want that thing. Maybe they're just like, oh, this thing is happening and it's not working, but they might not realize until later that they don't like it and therefore become sad.
Yeah, no, that's probably true with me.
Oh, it's interesting. Like I think my boyfriend is a high T user and he's always like he would always ask me what I want and then he would make what I want happen in a date or something like that. I always ask him what he wants. Like he's like, oh, what do you want? I'm like, I'll say something and then I'll say like, what do you want? And then he's like, I already have what I want you. And then, but I think it's true. But I think it actually is like he could just do whatever that works. Like if there's 5 things to do and they could all work, then he could just do whichever one. But I would know which one I prefer. I think FI just knows their desires more.
That's interesting, yeah. And I guess for me with them in the middle, it's more of like they're kind of
I don't think it's more that dramatic with the IJs and EPs?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't even know if this video was good, but there you go, guys.
Let us know what you guys think about these axes and about what we said about them. I guess this was kind of just like...
off the top of our head.
Yeah, so I think we'll try to condense what's actually true about this speech into our real video. So maybe there were some things that we said that were more stereotypical or maybe just more like true for like a singular person of that type or something like that. So...
in the meantime, I guess we'll try to find a freaking FJ or TP to join us. We make less TN type videos now, not because we don't like making them, but I moved to like a smaller city now, so we just have less people that know about MBTI here locally to do these videos, so that's why. But we'll try to find someone, I guess. And people in the audience, like, did we say anything about FE and TI users that were like blatantly false? Let us know. That would be helpful. Thanks.
Thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.